Memphis, Tennessee, 1906. A man walks into a bank and requests to see the vault. The tellers hesitate. He is black in the Jim Crow South, but his name carries weight that overrides protocol. Robert Reed Church Sr. owns the building. He owns 3 others on this street. His net worth exceeds $1 million in an era when the average American earns less than $500 annually. He was born enslaved on a Mississippi steamboat. Most history textbooks mention slavery. They mention emancipation. They describe sharecropping, poverty, segregation. What they do not mention is this. Within one generation of the 13th Amendment, there were documented black millionaires across America. Not dozens, not a statistical anomaly, but enough to form a pattern, a network, an economic infrastructure that threatened the foundational narrative of white supremacy. This part never appears in the curriculum, because acknowledging these fortunes requires confronting a question the official story cannot answer. If black Americans could accumulate such wealth immediately after bondage, what does that reveal about every century of manufactured poverty that followed? The year is 1865. 4 million people walk out of slavery with nothing. The Freedmen's Bureau estimates that 98% of formerly enslaved individuals own no property whatsoever. Conventional history ends the story there, a permanent underclass born from centuries of stolen labor. But walk through New Orleans in 1870, and you will find Tommy Lefon, a formerly enslaved man who now owns commercial properties across 3 parishes. His real estate portfolio generates rental income exceeding $10,000 annually. By 1880, his wealth surpasses $500,000. Look north to Philadelphia. Robert Purvis, born to a formerly enslaved mother, inherits his white father's estate in 1826. By Reconstruction, his fortune exceeds $250,000. He uses it to fund Underground Railroad operations, purchasing safe houses across 3 states. Census data from 1870 identifies approximately 12 black individuals with declared assets exceeding $100,000, the equivalent of multi-million-dollar wealth today. By 1890, that number grows to 23. By 1910, the Black Business Directory for Durham, North Carolina alone lists 47 black-owned enterprises with capital investments exceeding $10,000 each. Think about what this meant. The National Negro Business League, founded by Booker T. Washington in 1900, counts over 300 chapters representing 40,000 black business owners within 5 years. Yet when you open a standard American history textbook, this economic explosion does not exist. The narrative jumps from slavery to Jim Crow poverty, as if nothing happened in between. The official story requires their failure, because their success exposes the mechanism that came next. California, 1856. Bridget Mason walks 2,000 miles from Mississippi to Los Angeles with her Mormon slaveholder. California is a free state, but her owner plans to relocate to slaveholding Texas. Before he can cross the border, local black abolitionists petition the court. A judge frees her at age 38. 10 years later, she owns property in downtown Los Angeles, purchased for $250. By 1884, her holdings span multiple city blocks, valued at $300,000. She dies in 1891, worth nearly $500,000, leaving detailed property records, deeds, and a commercial building that still stands. Her story was taught in Los Angeles schools until the 1920s. Then it disappeared from curricula. The mechanisms behind that erasure were about to escalate into something far more deliberate. The first layer of erasure was physical. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. The Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street, houses over 10,000 residents. The neighborhood contains 600 businesses, 21 churches, 30 grocery stores, 2 theaters, a hospital, a bank, and a 13-story hotel. Residents include J.B. Stratford, millionaire hotel owner, O.W. Gurley, wealthy landowner, and A.J. Smitherman, publisher of the Tulsa Star. In 36 hours, white mobs, aided by local law enforcement, destroy it entirely. Airplanes drop incendiary devices, the first aerial bombing of an American city. Official reports count 36 dead. Unmarked mass graves, discovered in 2020, suggest 300. Every black-owned business is looted or burned. Property damage exceeds $30 million in modern currency. Not one white participant is prosecuted. Insurance companies refuse all claims. This was not the first. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. A white supremacist coup overthrows the elected biracial government. Black business owners flee with nothing. Census records show a 92% decline in black property ownership between 1900 and 1910. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. A thriving black town is burned to the ground over 6 days. By 1930, official state documents list Rosewood as uninhabited land. The massacre is not taught in Florida schools until 1993. The pattern repeats in Ocoee, Florida, 1920, Elaine, Arkansas, 1919, East St. Louis, 1917, Atlanta, 1906. Historians estimate over 50 documented incidents of mass violence specifically targeting black economic centers between 1890 and 1930. The conservative estimate of destroyed black wealth exceeds $50 billion in modern currency. But physical destruction was only half the mechanism. The second layer was legislative. After Reconstruction collapses in 1877, Southern states implement black codes designed specifically to restrict black economic mobility. Mississippi's Pig Law redefines theft of any property over $10 as grand larceny, punishable by 5 years hard labor, creating a convict leasing system that generates millions in state revenue. Vagrancy laws require proof of employment. Zoning laws prevent black businesses from operating in white commercial districts. Banking regulations deny black entrepreneurs access to capital. Robert Reed Church Sr., the Memphis Millionaire, survives being shot in the head during the 1866 Memphis riots. He opens a saloon, invests in real estate during the city's yellow fever collapse when property values crater. By 1900, he owns Church Park, the only recreational space in Memphis where black residents can gather. He builds the 600-seat Church Auditorium, hosting Booker T. Washington, Teddy Roosevelt, and W.E.B. Du Bois. His daughter, Mary Church Terrell, becomes one of the first black women to earn a college degree. His son, Robert Jr., builds Solvent Savings Bank, the first black-owned bank in Tennessee. Yet when Robert Sr. dies in 1912, his obituary in the white-owned Memphis Commercial Appeal runs 4 sentences. His financial records are excluded from business school curricula. The pattern of erasure targets not just individuals, but the knowledge itself. The third layer was academic. W.E.B. Du Bois publishes The Negro in Business in 1899, documenting thousands of black enterprises with precise financial data. His work is largely ignored by mainstream economics departments. Carter G. Woodson founds the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915, publishing the Journal of Negro History in 1916. White historians dismiss the journal as biased. Major universities do not subscribe. When textbooks cover Reconstruction, they emphasize failure and corruption, using language directly lifted from Confederate apologists. The lost cause narrative rewrites history to position emancipation as economic disaster, erasing every black millionaire whose existence contradicts that claim. Follow the chain. If black Americans could achieve millionaire status within decades of slavery, then segregation could not be justified as paternalistic protection. If black communities could build prosperous towns, then Jim Crow could not be framed as natural separation. Exclusionary laws revealed their true purpose, not maintaining order, but maintaining hierarchy. The evidence survived anyway. Property deeds filed in county courthouses, business licenses, tax records, newspaper advertisements, photographs, oral histories, legal documents, insurance policies, bank ledgers, wills detailing estates worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But evidence sitting in an archive does not enter public consciousness unless someone teaches it. And that is precisely what did not happen. By 1920, the mechanisms of erasure had intensified into coordinated suppression. The federal government begins tracking Negro statistics separately, but the data emphasizes pathology, not achievement. The Census Bureau documents black property ownership, but those figures are buried in technical reports. Meanwhile, the successes multiply. Madam C.J. Walker, born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 to formerly enslaved parents, dies in 1919 with a net worth exceeding $1 million. Her hair care empire employs over 20,000 women, operates factories in 4 cities. She purchases a mansion in Harlem and an estate in Irvington, New York. Her business strategies are studied in exactly 0 business schools during her lifetime. Annie Turnbow Malone, another black hair care magnate whose fortune exceeds Madam Walker's, builds Poro College in St. Louis in 1918, a massive complex housing manufacturing facilities, a beauty school, and an auditorium seating 500. Her company employs 75,000 sales agents nationwide. Her story is almost entirely absent from history textbooks until the 21st century. The backlash comes in waves. Zoning ordinances in dozens of cities specifically prohibit black residents from purchasing property in white neighborhoods. Louisville passes such a law in 1914. The NAACP challenges it. The Supreme Court rules it unconstitutional in Buchanan v. Worley, 1917. But the ruling does not stop the practice. Cities shift to racially restrictive covenants, private contracts prohibiting selling property to black buyers. By 1940, over 80% of Chicago's residential neighborhoods operate under such covenants. The Federal Housing Administration, created in 1934, institutionalizes the practice through redlining, marking black neighborhoods as hazardous for investment, denying mortgages, ensuring generational wealth cannot accumulate through home ownership. Think about Philip Payton Jr., who in 1900 founds the Afro-American Realty Company in New York, opening Harlem to black residents by purchasing buildings white landlords cannot fill during an economic downturn. By 1904, his company manages over 200 properties. He is worth approximately $150,000. Then the backlash hits. White property owners form associations to prevent black migration. Banks refuse loans. The city implements selective building code enforcement. Payton dies in 1917 at 45. His company dissolved. His pioneering strategies are not taught in business schools. The Great Depression hits black communities with devastating force, but it also reveals something crucial. Black banks and insurance companies that survived the 1920s prove more resilient than their white counterparts. North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, founded in 1898 by formerly enslaved individuals, weathers the Depression without failure. By 1945, it is the largest black-owned business in America, with assets exceeding $40 million. Yet when economics textbooks discuss Depression-era finance, North Carolina Mutual does not appear. The strategies that allowed black businesses to survive are not studied. The pattern of resilience contradicts the narrative of dependency that justifies New Deal programs structured to exclude black workers from benefits. The erasure becomes self-reinforcing. If textbooks do not teach black economic achievement, students do not learn it. If students do not learn it, they do not question its absence. Each generation believes it is encountering black poverty as a natural condition, not an engineered outcome. But the evidence keeps accumulating. The National Negro Business League's annual reports document thousands of black-owned enterprises. The Chicago Defender, Pittsburgh Courier, and Amsterdam News publish regular features on black millionaires. Probate records list estates worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Someone was keeping track. The question is, who had access to those records, and who controlled the narrative about what they meant? The historical breaking point comes not in a single moment, but in a cascading series of legal and social confrontations that force the suppressed narrative toward the surface. Brown v. Board of Education declares school segregation unconstitutional. The decision does not mention the wealth gap, does not address the destroyed property, does not acknowledge the millionaires whose existence contradicted segregationist logic. But it cracks open a door. The resistance is immediate. Southern states pass laws prohibiting teaching about racial equality. Textbook publishers, wary of Southern markets that constitute 30% of their sales, refuse content that contradicts lost cause mythology. The compromise produces textbooks that mention Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, while continuing to frame black history as victimhood requiring white intervention. But something is shifting. In 1968, Harvard University establishes an African American Studies department following student protests. Other universities follow. Scholars gain institutional backing to research suppressed histories. John Hope Franklin publishes From Slavery to Freedom in 1947, documenting black economic achievement alongside political struggle. The archives begin yielding their secrets. Researchers uncover the full scope of the Tulsa massacre, the Wilmington coup, The Rosewood destruction. Property records reveal the scale of wealth destroyed. Insurance documents show systematic denial of claims. Legal files expose mechanisms used to strip black families of assets. Tax records prove black millionaires existed in every southern state during Reconstruction. Yet even as research accumulates, it remains confined to academic journals. Textbooks change slowly, grudgingly. California adds ethnic studies requirements in 1980. Texas fights similar standards for 3 decades. High school narratives continue emphasizing black poverty while omitting black wealth. Then comes the reckoning with Tulsa. In 1996, the Oklahoma legislature establishes a commission to investigate the massacre. Survivors testify. Mass graves are located. Property deeds are exhumed from courthouse archives. In 2001, the commission recommends reparations. The state refuses. Insurance companies refuse. The city refuses. Legal challenges fail. But the truth is now documented, undeniable, taught in Oklahoma schools. The comparison to other destroyed black communities becomes unavoidable. DNA analysis begins, confirming oral histories. Archaeological digs uncover foundations of destroyed buildings. Property records, cross-referenced with census data, reveal family fortunes that vanished between decades. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Systematic, targeted destruction of black wealth at every point when it threatened to establish permanence. Consider what was lost when Greenwood burned. J.B. Stratford's hotel generated annual revenues exceeding $100,000. O.W. Gurley's businesses employed over 300 people. The destroyed bank held deposits from 5,000 black families. The burned hospital was the only facility serving black patients within 200 miles. The torched libraries housed 10,000 books. 3 generations of accumulated wealth converted to ash in 36 hours. Multiply that across 50 communities. Calculate the compound interest on $50 billion over a century. Factor in the businesses that would have expanded, the properties that would have appreciated, the inheritances that would have funded education, the capital that would have launched new ventures. The economic impact reaches into the trillions. This was not accidental decline. This was engineered poverty. The truth resurfaces through multiple channels. Genealogists, tracing family trees, discover ancestors who appear in one census as property owners worth thousands, then disappear from the next. Historians, cross-referencing newspaper archives, find society pages describing elaborate black social events in towns that officially had no black residents. Archaeologists excavating urban renewal sites uncover remnants of destroyed black business districts beneath modern parking lots. The digital age accelerates the process. Ancestry websites make property records searchable. Digitized newspapers reveal advertisements for black-owned department stores, theaters, hotels. Social media connects descendants who share photographs of great-grandparents standing in front of mansions, wearing expensive clothes, driving luxury cars, all dated between 1870 and 1920. The Smithsonian opens the National Museum of African American History and Culture in 2016. One exhibit displays Madam C.J. Walker's business ledgers, showing monthly revenues that exceed what most modern small businesses generate. Another features photographs of Black Wall Street before the massacre. Visitors stare at images of prosperity they were never taught existed. Universities begin offering courses specifically on black economic history. Textbook publishers slowly incorporate figures like Robert Church, Bridget Mason, Annie Malone. But the integration remains incomplete. The narrative still centers suffering and salvation, struggle and civil rights, poverty and progress through white intervention. What gets left out is autonomy. The ability of black Americans to create wealth independently, to build economic systems that did not require white approval, to accumulate capital and deploy it strategically. That version of history remains too threatening to the comfortable narratives about who built America and who merely benefited from white generosity. The legal battles continue. Descendants of Tulsa massacre victims file lawsuits seeking compensation. The cases are dismissed on statute of limitations grounds, but the publicity forces official acknowledgement. In 2020, Tulsa begins excavating mass graves. The remains confirm what survivors said for a century. The death toll was not 36, it was hundreds. Evanston, Illinois becomes the first city to pay reparations for housing discrimination in 2021. The amount is modest, $10 million, distributed to black residents who can prove harm from discriminatory policies. But it establishes precedent. Other cities begin examining their own histories of destroyed black wealth. The pattern recognition spreads. When people learn about Greenwood, they start asking about their own cities. Every major American city has a version of this story. A black neighborhood that thrived, then was destroyed through urban renewal, highway construction, eminent domain, discriminatory lending, or direct violence. The Fillmore District in San Francisco, Bronzeville in Chicago, Black Bottom in Detroit, Sugar Hill in Harlem. The wealth gap persists. The median white family holds 10 times the wealth of the median black family. But now the cause is documented. It was not cultural deficiency. It was not lack of entrepreneurship. It was not inability to compete. It was systematic, repeated, legally sanctioned theft spanning a century and a half. Understanding this history reframes everything. The question is no longer, why are black Americans poorer? The question becomes, what would black America look like if 10 millionaire business people per generation, over 5 generations, had been allowed to build generational wealth instead of having it destroyed? The answer exists in the archives, in property deeds filed in dusty courthouse basements, in census records showing black neighborhoods where every household owned property, in tax documents listing black businesses with 6-figure annual revenues, in wills distributing estates worth modern millions to descendants who inherited nothing because the property was seized, burned, or stolen before the inheritance could transfer. Robert Reed Church Sr. walked into his own bank in 1906 as a black millionaire in Jim Crow Memphis. His story was not impossible. It was not rare. It was suppressed. And its suppression served a purpose, maintaining the lie that black poverty was inevitable rather than engineered, natural rather than designed, cultural failure rather than systemic theft. That lie is collapsing. The evidence is surfacing. The pattern is visible. What was buried is being excavated. What was erased is being rewritten. What was stolen is being acknowledged, even if it cannot be returned. This is not ancient history. The last survivor of the Tulsa race massacre died in 2023 at age 109. The policies that destroyed black wealth were not medieval artifacts. They were federal law within living memory. The people who benefited from that destruction are still alive. The institutions that enabled it still exist. And the millionaires who survived slavery? They proved what was always possible. They demonstrated what systemic oppression had to work very hard to prevent. They built wealth despite laws designed to make it impossible. They succeeded despite violence meant to destroy them. They left evidence despite campaigns to erase them. Their legacy is not tragedy. Their legacy is proof. Proof that the official story was a lie. Proof that the poverty that followed was not inevitable. Proof that what was taken can be named, measured, and confronted. And proof that understanding this history changes everything about how we interpret the present and imagine the future.